Hello and welcome back. A few weeks ago I got this old green princess. I couldn't resist it. So it's in that really sort of muted shade of green. So I do have a couple of these in various conditions. So definitely an acetate model. Let's see if we can just have a look in the back here. We've got a really rather large split. You can see, just beginning to see in there, we've got some cab detail down there. See if I can keep that in focus. And the little strip which goes underneath the drawbar here is definitely long gone. But I think what we'll do, we'll just sort of get it, see if we can get it back to run. I don't expect it to sort of run and charge around as freely as other models. It's mainly the tender which I think is going to restrict it. The back-to-back on the tender wheels is quite tight on the tracks, and I don't really have the desire to break the tender trying to take it apart to try and resolve the problem. But we'll have a look at that later. Let's just have a look over there. So there is a brake on the front, but one of the things that attracted me to this is it does retain its original front steps. So very often on these early princesses from the early to mid-50s, these front steps are missing. So let's just have a look here and see if we can see where that brake is. I don't know whether we can see the glue in there. Can I get this a little bit closer and in focus? You can see it's got it must have run into something there, and we can see the split and the damage here. But I think it's probably what we would call a survivor. But I think it's quite a lovely thing, and it does have most of its decals almost completely intact. So if I have a look on that cab side there, see how thick they are as well. So they sort of really stand up off the surface. I'm not quite sure what type of process was used, whether they were just sort of a water slide or spirit slide sort of transfer. I'm not sure it was heat printing. And we don't have any metal safety valves. Let me see if I can just go around to the other side, and we'll have a look at that. See, isn't that beautiful? It's still retaining all of that detail on the sides there. Definitely solid wheels. And it's got the full set of valve gear. No coupling on the front on these early ones when you've got the front steps moulded into the bodywork. And there's a little bit of wrinkling on the pickups. Which way are we up here? They're down there. I don't know whether we can see that. So I think what I'll do is we'll get this apart. We'll have a look over it, and we'll get it into some sort of shape where we can get it to run gently on the railway. If I just put that one down, sorry, I'm not looking what I'm doing here. We'll pop that on the rolling road there, and then we'll just pick up the tender and have a look over the tender. So the other beautiful thing about it is the tender is almost entirely intact. The lining on the tender is almost completely intact. So look at that, there is definitely distortion. I mean, throughout the whole model, and there's knocks and scuffs in it. But for the lining to have stayed in such beautiful condition is quite something, I think, for a model of this age. And definitely the early style of tender as well, I think. So it's slightly taller. Now you can see that distortion through the back of it there. So the bottom of the tender is in two halves. And it's I think it's glued together, and the whole there it's got a weight inside it. I don't know whether that's an original factory fit weight or whether somebody's had this apart in the past, but it's definitely glued together, and it's not coming apart. So the back to back on this, it's almost like it's too wide, and there is a distortion, like a twist down its length, which makes it very uncomfortable on the rails. And see if we can just get a little bit more detail in there. So it's quite a lovely thing. It's just a nice item, a variation to have. So there's like a slight nick out of the lining there, but hopefully we're going to keep that intact. We've got a cold load in the top there. See if we can handle this nice and carefully so we get some focus down there. I can hear my stomach making strange noises. I do hope that isn't coming across on the video too loudly. So I have just had some lunch. So it's quite a lovely thing. So I think what we'll do is we'll see if we can get the top off the locomotive and have a quick look over it. So I'm just going to pop that down there safely there, and we'll just grab a screwdriver and see if we can undo this screw here. Have I got the right sort of screwdriver? I think I have. This one's don't know whether we can keep that in shot there. There we go. So that's undone. So ideally that's just going to pull off there. So let me see if we can encourage this one apart. There we go. And there is a little bit of extra friction there because the body has shifted over time. Let's pop the chassis down and we'll have a quick look over the body before the fingers get too oily off handling the metal work there. So let's just grab hold of that. And we'll see if we can have a look. Whoops! I should have taken that securing screw out of the chimney there. You can see the crack there on the foot plate running right through there, and there should be a band, little strip of plastic coming across there, but a very, very fragile thing, and they definitely seem to be away. So there's a sort of mild distortion running through this body, and there we can see that glue more clearly there on the underside now. Let me just turn that around a little bit, and we'll just have a look at have we got Triang's name in there? Hopefully we're holding that in focus. And then we've got Made in England just sort of running through there. So I really was quite taken with it. And then we've got Princess Elizabeth, that's sort of splashed in red paint over the wheel arch there. Let's see how that looks on the other side as well. There we go. It is quite crude when you look at it, but I don't think that really detracts from it for me. We've got some wear through there of the black paint. So let's pop that down. Pop that down there. And then we'll just grab the chassis. So I think somebody has made a solder repair. Let's see if we can... There we go, we've got some focus back. I think somebody looks like they've resoldered this area together. These wires. But, lovely solid wheels, plain valve gear. We'll just have a look down the other side. So that front bogie keeps getting in the way. I should just hold that there. We'll turn that over. We'll have a look down there. So I think what we'll do is we'll just cut away, and I'll actually no, we won't cut away. We'll just pop this on the rolling road and see if it sort of coughs and splutters into life. And if you look at the state of the wheels though, there's nothing trapped in it anywhere, and everything looks like it'll run freely. The valve gear isn't bent so much that it won't run, and the armature does spin quite smoothly there. So let's pop that on the rolling road and just give it a little bit of power. I'm just going to grab another telephone so we can have a look. I'll see if I can get this in a little bit closer. So excuse me while I just grab this out of shot. So if I just reach for the clipper, we'll give that a little power and see if she'll cough into life here. So it's very sort of hummy and buzzy, isn't it? But there is life there. Let's see if that'll run in the other direction. Yeah, so it's not that happy, is it? So let's give it one more try in the other direction. So I think what we'll do is we'll get that apart and we'll clean it up a bit. So if I grab the screwdriver, actually I'm just going to turn this other device off. If I grab the screwdriver, we'll just see what the magnet's like. So I really should be able to lift at least the tail end of that up with the magnetism there. It's just there's nothing there. So that's going to need a go in the magnetizer. That's going to hugely improve that. So if we get the motor off, we'll be able to get that bottom plate, collector plate, and straighten those pickups out there. Get all that filth off the wheels there. They look really grubby, don't they? And we'll lubricate the axles, perhaps clean up the axles with a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? I can't remember the name of the liquid I'm going to spray in there. Let me just grab the can I find this very good. It's this particular product, I find that quite good for cleaning things up. So yeah, I'll give that a go in the axles, but also let's have a swift look at the box that this came in. I don't think this is the correct box for the locomotive. It would have come in 2 boxes, 1 box for the locomotive and 1 box for the tender. But this is the box that the locomotive came in when it came to me. So you can see we've got the Princess Elizabeth scribbled on the patch on the end there, and it's quite a nice looking box. I think this is a coach box by the looks of it. I could be wrong. It may be the original box, but it doesn't seem like it to me. And we've got this lovely thick sticker there. It's very thick paper, and it's had the effects of sellotape over it there. So quite a lovely thing, whether it's the right or the wrong box. But this box for the tender is a different sort of thing altogether. So this has a sort of a lift off, like a flap, rather than the opening ends. So the later boxes have slightly opening ends. So I'm thinking this model's probably sort of early mid-50s. That lovely thick sellotape has been around the edge of there. So it's quite a nice thing. I'm not sure whether this is pricing or not. There's the number for the tender, R31 for the tender. The body was a R.53. Let's have a look down on the other side there. Let's see if we can grab focus on that. So quite nice items. So again, we'll cut away, and I'll just dismantle this a little. So we'll see if we can just get the motor off here. This is all going to be sort of finger and thumbs. So I don't like doing this on camera usually, because it can get quite dull. Let's see if we can undo that. I don't know how much closer we can get. Can we see in there? So I have to look where I'm doing this, rather than look at the camera. So I'm unsure whether this is coming in and out of frame. I think that needs 1 more turn on the screw there. I thought that was free. Let's see if we can get that. There we go. There, I think we have that now. So that motor is almost free. So it just needs to, I think just a little turn of the motor there should release that. There we go. So if I just pop that down and stick that down there, and see if we can release the brushes there. So if I take that off there, so that doesn't want to come out of there. Let me have a close look. I don't think we're going to need the rolling road for a bit, so let's just move that out of the way there. And we'll take that spring off the brush there, so that brush can safely come out of the side. We'll have a look at those in a second. So it's this one with the connection to the feed, which is the tricky one there. If that's going to come off, it's going to snap off in my fingers, and we'll end up having to resolder that. There we go. And then that brush can come out of there. Let's just have a look at those brushes. Let's see if I can get those up to camera. There we go. Just falling off the fingers, so there's a little bit of tarnishing. We can see that going on there. We've got some light in there. So they've got quite a lot of wear on them. So maybe we'll just have to refinish those. See if we can get focus there. So we'll just refinish those gently with a file. So I'm not going to do all of this on camera, I don't think, but we'll do some of it perhaps. So we'll pop that down there. And then we'll just have a look at this motor. So it's not as dirty as it could be, but definitely needs a little bit of a clean. There's a fair bit of float in there. Is there any sort of movement? It feels reasonable. So yeah, I think we'll get that cleaned up. So let's grab a cotton bud, and we'll do a little cleaning on there. I know many will use gloves and so on, but let's just wipe that sort of away from the windings like that, and then pull stuff out of it. There we go. We'll see if we can just dampen that end there, and we'll do the other segment as well. So I'm just doing along. That's the one I've already done. I'm just doing along with the groove is the slot, and we'll clean those out in a moment. But let's see what comes out with that. So let's grab another cotton bud there. A little bit more petrol on there. That was wobbly. You can use whatever liquid you feel comfortable using for this. I've always used this. It seems to work quite nicely. So I think I'm not sure. I'm going to put these over here. I'm not sure these are the best quality cotton buds I've ever had for this. They're more hairy than they should be. So again, I'm just wiping away now. I'm doing the bits between the grooves, the slots. It's quite thick. So there we go. And we begin to just bring off some of this gunk around the housing and the frame and so on. Let's get a little bit more. We'll just do the other side there. So just cleaning up a little bit around the frame there. I'm not going to go wild with it. Let's see what we've got there. So it's not too oily back there, so it's quite dry. We're definitely going to need some lubrication on there at some point, but we'll get that through the magnetizer before we lubricate it. So I'm just using this is a cocktail stick, and I've just cut down it so you get a very sharp end. I've done both ends just in case we need both, and I'm just going to clean out in the groove like that. Can we see that? We'll get that in there like that, and I think my sort of previous cleaning there with the cotton bud has got most of the build up out of there. So we'll just we'll go around carefully. Whilst I am holding the armature there, I'm being very careful not to exert too much pressure on it and damage it. So let's do down this slot here. If I get a bit closer there, and you see it's all sort of black and horrible on the end there. But sometimes you see these commutators and they've got huge grooves, really deeply worn. So this groove feels tighter, although I have turned the stick around, so maybe I haven't shaved it quite as much on the other end, but it feels like a physically smaller slot in the groove. Let's feel this one. Yeah, it is. That one was physically smaller. It's a narrower slot, or it certainly feels that way. There we go. I think that's probably enough of that. So that looks pretty good for starters like that. So we'll get that in the magnetizer in a moment. But let's just have a quick look over the brushes here. Let's just give a little dampen another one of those, and let's have a look at these brushes and see if we can just clean up a little bit on there. So that green is fairly in there. I don't think that's coming away, but that's on the insulated brush anyway, so that's not really going to cause us a problem if I put it back on the insulated side. But that could definitely do with a light file just to get that big curvature off there. I don't know whether we're keeping focus there. So just so we can get the curvature off there. So if I'd thought ahead, I could have grabbed the file. Whoops, I'm going to pull the whole load down. So yeah, so you just run across there with a file. I'm not going to do this on camera over the chassis, so that's just asking for trouble. And I'll clean up this other brush. So let's have a look at that one. Yes, I don't know whether we can see that. There's a lot of wear on there. So possibly a candidate for a new set of brushes, but seems we're never really going to run this very much. It's just going to look at it a little bit of a move down the track and so on. I think maybe there's enough life on these brushes for what we intend to do. So I'm just looking now. I can't see my glass fibre pen. There we go. There's one there. So we can. This is the one that could go back on the live side. So we could do the inside of that. So again, off camera, you could be really quite precise with this, and I will sort of tidy this lot up, and we can just make that look a bit prettier there. And then we can do the top end of this where it's going to make contact with the feed. So that should improve matters a little. There we go. So there is more work here to do on the chassis. Let's pop those to one side, and we'll pop that in the magnetizer in a moment. And let's see what we've got here. So they run quite nice and smooth. So I think the only thing is that a slight catch there. I think that's just because the valve gear was lying to one side. So I think that's moving quite smoothly. So I'm going to clean up initially those wheels with some petrol. And let's have a look at that. I don't want to take the wiring loom all the way out of here. So let's dampen that. I can't see my other glass fibre pen, which is what I would normally use on the wheels. Let's see if we can get that through there like that. So we can. That is quite ingrained on there like that. So maybe that's a stain in the metalwork there. Can we see that? So I don't know. That's coming away. So we're going to need a little bit more work on here. But I think what I'll do is I'll come back to that off camera, because that's going to get very, very dull watching that over. Also, while I get another couple of things doing and come back to this, is this glass fibre pen? It's the yellow one I was looking for. This one's run out, so I'll have to put a refill in there in a moment. So we'll just get the collector plate off here while we've still got the camera running, and we'll see if we can have a look at those contacts, those pickups on the backs of the wheels. Should probably just take these off while we're at it as well. It's going to be much easier to handle. There we go. That took longer to come out than I thought. We'll have a look at that in a second. I'm being very careful with this plastic part here that holds the valve gear, the motion bracket, I think we call that. So we don't want to damage that. There are many reproductions of those available now online, which is good, because for a while they were really difficult to get hold of when they were broken, and they don't usually break in a manner where you can fix them. There we go. So we'll pop that down there. We'll just pop that there, and we'll have a quick look at that. So that's the rear truck there. So again, off camera, I'll push those wheels out, give them a clean, and get them back in again. That's going to be far too dull to watch. And again, there's that lovely front bogie. Those very early looking wheels on there. Let's see if we can grab focus there. I'll give those a little bit of a light clean. They don't look too bad, those. Although, I don't know whether we're going to do the overnight test on those ones, overnight soak on those ones or not. I'll have a look. but we'll come back to that. Let's just let's take off the bottom plate. I don't really want to take the wiring loom out of this if I don't have to. So let's see if we can get that down there. I thought I had that. There we go. There we have it. So 2 screws there. Let's see if we can just lift that one up. Yeah, there's a piece of backing paper on there as well. Let me lift that up and we'll just have a look in there so we can see. There's the collector plate and there's a sort of a card or paper insulator or backing plate. So on many of the later models we don't have that part. But let's just have a look at that collection wiper there. So I think what I need to do is, apart from clean that, I'll just see if we can. I'll encourage the wrinkles to come out of it so it becomes a little bit flatter, and then maybe we'll get some better pickup on there. So yeah, so I'll do a few of those things, and then we'll come back to it and see where we're at. So there I've cleaned up the motor a little more, the top plate, and we've got the bottom plate cleaned up, especially where it makes contact with the chassis. And there's sort of, that moves around nice and freely. So we'll get that in the magnetizer. So if you want to see more information about the magnetizer, have a look at Ronald Dodd's great YouTube channel. He's got more information about them there. So I've checked which way around north is, so it needs to go in the machine this way around. So that's with the brush holders pointing that way towards the switch. So and the magnetizer indicates that north is going to be that way. So let's just pop that in there, and you can see as it goes between the pole pieces there, it moves with ease there. So there's not much magnetism there. So we'll just give it a couple of quick blasts, and another one, and then if you look, it sort of almost pulls the machine, so it's made that much difference to the magnet in there now. So it's important that you don't remove the magnet from between the pole pieces on the motor here, or it will lose its magnetism again. And now you can feel that sort of clicking around as it runs around. So we'll get the brushes back in that and get it back on the chassis, and we'll have a look over it. There we have the brushes back in the motor there, so that should all be running much nicer now. So hopefully when it's reattached to the chassis, we'll get a bit nicer movement out of it. Let's see if we can just put a little bit of power on here. Let's grab these fly leads here, pop that on there, and let's see if we can just encourage that to run. So hopefully it all runs quite nicely. So I think that just needs, the brushes need to bed in there a little bit as well, and I think that's going to benefit from a little bit of oil on there. So let's grab the oil. Let's just pop that down there for a second. So I use a light sewing machine oil for most things, and I will use a little bit of white grease on the gears, on the worm wheel. Even though these ones haven't got a plastic worm wheel, I still quite like this white grease on these items. So I'm just going to give like a tiny drop. Let's see if we can get that, how close we can get that to the camera without keeping focus. We'll put some on that sort of very dry sort of washer here to retain oil. So it's like a fibre washer, and we'll put one drop there on the back of the armature where it goes into the back of the motor there. So again, we'll put some few drops of oil on here. It's all very, very dry. I'll put some down at the bottom edge there. There we go, that is dry, it's soaking straight into there. I don't know whether we can see that. Now, I don't like to stick oil down there by the commutator. I think oil gets to where it needs to go if we go in here, just behind the worm. If we just, a little bit of end float, we just put a drop in there. I think that's probably all we'll need in there. So that should run a great deal smoother now. So let's just pop the brushes back on here. I'm not watching what I'm doing there, so I've got to look away from what the camera is, and everything drops out of frame. So let's see if we can give that a little bit of power again. So I can't quite hold that in place. So I think we're going to be in good shape there. So we'll just pop that down for one side, exciting as that is, and we'll come back to that in a moment. We'll get that on the chassis. So I've got this front bogie here, so I've cleaned that up. I've had that in warm soapy water with a little shower cleaner in for the last couple of hours. It's all come up quite nicely. So I'll give that a bit of a light oil when it gets back on the chassis as well. So and then we've got this rear truck here. So we had that out, we've got that all cleaned up. So not much to clean, just to run through there and get the residue of the oil out of there. And I did have, let's grab these items, see if we can have a look at those. So those are the wheels from the rear truck. Whoops. Let me grab that. We won't tip them off my hand as we're bringing them up towards the camera. So they've all quite cleaned up really, really nicely as well. So had those in the same sort of soapy water as the front bogie there. I put the whole bogie in and it all dried up quite nicely. That was just really gungy and sticky. You can see the spline on the one end of there. Have we got focus there? So that's all cleaned up really nicely. So we'll push all those back together, but again, we'll not do that on the camera. And let's just have a quick look over the bottom end here again. So when I did get that collection plate off, and I said I was going to straighten those collection wipers up. So I left a little turnout on the ends of them, but tried to get the wrinkles out from the length of them, because I didn't think that was doing it any good. So that front one has definitely had been a bit bent at some point. Somebody else has had a go at straightening it in the past. But I left that tiny little turnout at the end there. So I'll get this reassembled, and we'll get it on the rolling road, and we'll see how it goes. So there it is, all sort of back together. We'll just give that a little bit of power. There's no oil on the axles or the connection rods or the worm at the moment, so there's just the oil on the motor that you saw me put on a few moments ago. So let's just put some power on there. So I think that's quite encouraging. I think that's only going to get better. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to shoot this handheld here as well, and I'm wobbling with the camera too much. So yeah, I think if we give that some oil, that's definitely going to improve, isn't it? So I'm quite pleased with that. As I say, this is never going to be a great runner due to the problems with the tender that we spoke about earlier. But I think we'll get some oil on there, and we'll give that another go in a moment. So there we go. Final one now, I think, before we get the whole thing back together. So I'll just give that a little bit of power. I think that's rather good. So those brushes are going to bed in nicely. Let's crank that up a little bit more. just slow that down. We'll try the opposite direction. Yeah, so I think that's going to be a nice thing. So good enough just for a little bit of a gentle roll around the layout with some sort of age-appropriate coaches, I think. So I think we'll get the top back on that, and we'll have a look at that tomorrow, because I've run out of time for this evening. And we'll get that back on the rails, not back on the rails, but on the rails, and we'll dig out some sensible-looking coaches to go with it. Here we are following morning. I was just looking back over the footage that was shot yesterday, and I realised that I hadn't done the screwdriver test after we'd run this motor through the magnetiser. So if you remember, the screwdriver was just pulling straight off the motor, and wasn't able to pull the chassis back up off the deck there. So if you look at that, we've definitely got quite a lot more magnetism there now. So that should really improve the performance of the motor. Not that we're going to do a huge amount of running with this particular model. It's just one of those nice models to have in the collection, and an occasional short run on the railway, and definitely brings a smile to the face. Excuse my hand there. We'll just pop that on the rails. There we go. So let me zoom in a little bit, and we'll see if we can have there we go. See if we can keep an eye on the motor, see if we can keep up with this, and just give it a little bit of a gentle run. So I think that runs quite beautifully. I've got a couple of R.21 coaches there in the background, so we'll get that hooked up with those in a moment. See if we can come in a little bit tighter there. So I think that's quite a lovely thing. Once more backwards there. There we go. So I think what we'll do, we'll get the top back on that, and we'll get that hooked up. Let's go a bit wider here, and we'll get that hooked up with these R.21 coaches. So I think these are available early to mid 50s. I think this pair I've got here, I think they must be a polystyrene pair. There's no real distortion in these. I think we've seen these before, and we've had seen some of the ones I have with huge amount of distortion in. If you have a look at the insert picture there, I'll put a couple in for you to see there. But these are quite free running ones, fairly nice condition. And yeah, let's have a look down the side there. We've got some numbering on the side of the coach there. No seating. And see that roof is just bowing a little bit, but I think it's in fairly tidy condition. And let's just grab this one here. So again, that's in a very similar condition. What have we got down the side there? Definitely got a glazing unit in there. So I think yeah, we'll just get this lot back together. We'll get the top back on, and we'll see how it performs. There we are, all on the rails with the coaches. As we said earlier, definitely not a perfect model, but quite a pretty one. Distortion, twists, and splits, and scuffs and stuff all over it, but enough of that lining just to make it such a lovely item. Definitely brings a smile to the face when you're looking at it. So there we go, we've got a couple of R.21 coaches there. I'm just going to rotate this around because the camera gets heavy to hold that way around. Let's give that a little power and see if we can gently run around the railway there. Definitely makes a different sound once we've got the body shell back on, doesn't it? So you can see that tender wobbling away there. So it's definitely not a happy placement on the track, that tender. And I think the more weight you put behind it, the more susceptible it will be to just pulling off the rails. So I think the chassis of that tender has definitely bit of a twist and distortion, apart from being glued in two parts. So I'm just getting twisted up in the cables here. Let's give that another once around there. Let's see if we can come in nice and low over here. I love the colour as well. I'm not sure how long they produce models in this colour. I've got one other, it's a slightly later, one with the later tender. I think we saw it a couple of months ago. Let's bring that to a stop. There we go. So just on the last week's video, we had that B12 and it was misbehaving running that direction around the railway. So I'm still walking into things, as you can hear. So it was coming around here, and it really didn't like it was coming through the point here and stuttering and stalling, wasn't it? So I've had a fiddle with that, and I think we made improvements with that. Let's just give that a go while we're here. I know this video is dragging out a little, so these things, when you're trying to do so many, I'll show so many things. There we go. Let's give that a little power. So ideally, if I grab hold of the control here, we should. I'm not pointing at the locomotive there. So let's give that a little power. Yeah, so if you remember, it was running one way over it and not the other. So it's this way it was causing the issue. I'm not sure whether I've left any hazards around the railway here. Let's just give that the once around and we'll just get back to the Green Princess. A little bit jumpy on that point. Actually, I'm going to go once around again. I haven't stopped that quite where I wanted to, but there's an excuse to go around again there. Let's slow that down a little bit earlier this time. There we go, a little bit abrupt perhaps. Right, let's seal that one back in there, and then we'll get back to this Green Princess for a moment. I'm definitely going to trip over that box. I keep clipping it with my foot. That one there. So let's uncouple this and let's see how we do with a manoeuvre with it. So I think we'll just drive that forward. That should leave the coaches there. There we go. Let's take that off there, and let's pan gently round. Let's see if we can get this the Green Princess onto the turntable. We'll have a go at turning it, possibly asking for trouble. Yeah, that point's all good. So let's give that a go. Let's grab the controls. Yeah, see that tender wobbling away there. Let's see how she does if she crosses this set of points towards the turntable. There we go. I just got to put the handset down. If I try and remain looking at the turntable, we'll press the button. if I remember to turn this the correct direction. Let's see if we can roll off the turntable. There we go. So I think if we just change these points here, and we'll back up and see if we can hook up with these coaches the other way around. So I'm a bit worried about this going into the curves tender first here. So let's see what happens. Definitely on the wobbly side. Double point here. Whoops. So it's definitely come adrift there. So it's jammed itself in the points, hasn't it? So I think I'm going to give that a helping hand here. Let's move that there. There we go. Yeah, so it's not happy on there. Still, I think we've done reasonably well with it. Get it up onto the turntable and around. Let's see if we can catch these coaches. And I think that'll probably be it for today. So definitely dragged on a little bit longer than I thought, but I know a number of people have been asking to see me sort of bring a motor back into reasonable running condition, and this seemed to be the model to do it. So let's see how we do across that point this way round. There we go. Let's see if we can get out in front of it without tripping myself up. Whoops. We don't want it to tear away. I think that's probably it for this week. Thanks again for watching. Goodbye now.